Not too shabby there. Welcome to Andertons TV, everybody. And today, my guest is the wonderful Glenn Proudfoot.
Hey guys, nice to be here.
All the way from the other side of the world.
Yeah. Well, not really.
Not
Been
quite.
In Prague. Yeah,
that's true. Glenn and I have known each other for 3 or 4 years. We met when Andertons had, was just becoming a victory dealer, and Glenn had done the very first ever kind of, his victory kind of video.
That's right, yeah.
And we've stayed in touch ever since, and we talk, fairly regularly about life, the universe, and everything like that. And he's such a phenomenally talented guitar player. I've been asking Glenn to kind of come and do a video with us for the last year or so, and finally,
it's great to be here, man. Thank you.
So, for the guys that perhaps aren't familiar with you, tell them a bit about your how you where are you at as a guitar player? What do you do?
Well, I have a studio in Prague that I've had that. I built that about 1.5 years ago. So yeah, my great passion, obviously, my first passion is guitar, but I love writing and playing, music. So I spend a lot of the time in the studio writing. I've done about 6 albums over the last 4 years, and quite big, complicated albums. So I spend a lot of time in Europe, and when it starts to get cold here, I go back home and enjoy the beaches in summer.
Oh, that's, wouldn't we all if we could? So how long have you been playing the guitar now? I mean, is this?
I actually got my first guitar when I was about 9 or 10 years old.
Do you have a musical family?
No, not at all. No. My older brother bought me the guitar. He was a boxer. He was a champion Australian boxer. Won 5 Australian championships, and he took me into the to boxing with him, and I loved it until I got hit, and I was like, this isn't for me. But I always had a great passion for music and the guitar from a really young age, and yeah, my bro actually bought me my first guitar when I was about 9 or 10. And I was a mad AC/DC fan, and
right.
It, as luck would have it, it was not a Gibson SG, but it was some copy of an SG, and so yeah, that's when it started. But I didn't start. I didn't kind of start getting any lessons or anything till I was about 11 or 12.
Right.
So the very early years were, just God knows what I was playing, but I was just getting a feel for it.
It's a good time that you see some kids where their parents trying to get them to play the ukulele when they're 4 years old or whatever, and then other kids who maybe, or not, young people who perhaps don't get into it until they're maybe 15 or 16 years old. But I do kind of think that sort of optimum, round about 8-9 years old is when you're starting to maybe have an attention span that's long enough to sort of dedicate a bit more practice, and then certainly 11 or 12. If you can start getting some lessons around about that time, it gives you such a huge advantage.
Yeah, but absolutely.
Some kids, and myself, you pick up the guitar and you play it when you're a teenager, and you enjoy it and you play an hour here and an hour there, and then other people become utterly obsessed with it. Were you one of the, obviously to reach the level of ability you must have, something early on must have switched that light bulb that just says, I need to do this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I didn't. I was always obsessed with it, but my really strict practice regime didn't kick in till I was about 14 or 15, 16, these kind of years. But in the beginning, I just loved it. I just loved playing, as everyone does. You learn a chord and you're like, you feel like a king. But yeah, but it wasn't until I reached high school or secondary school that they had a music program, and there was drums there, and there was other kids who played instruments, and that's when I learned the joy of playing with other people. And then obviously, you know, other kids in the school think it's cool, and you start to get a bit of attention, and you're like, oh yeah, this is pretty good. Yeah. So, but I did have a ukulele when I was 4 or 5, and I loved it. My mum still, you know, makes jokes about it. She said you would never go without it. You always loved it. And cool. I remember just being fascinated with the guitar from a very young age.
And other than, you know, Angus and Malcolm,
yep,
I guess maybe even I can so see why you know, AC/DC is such a, you know, that kind of standing there, the big power thing, and this stadium rock band. But who were the first more sort of virtuoso guitar players that you think you know, because clearly you know, you're not, what you're playing now is not you know, AC/DC, like it's much more virtuoso level kind of guitar playing.
Yeah, look, that's where I probably differ a little bit from other players, is that I never, the first virtuoso who I mean, look, I consider Jimi Hendrix a virtuoso, Stevie Ray Vaughan a virtuoso, but probably in a more modern sense, they're virtuosos in a certain area of guitar playing, you know, like blues, Stevie Ray and Hendrix as well. Hendrix's songwriting was absolutely amazing. I still don't think it's been matched today. But I guess in the more modern sense, the first, you know, true virtuoso was Eric Johnson, who I really, really got into. Because for me, the whole neoclassical kind of thing, I admired their technique, but I just couldn't connect with it. Because in Australia, it's a really rock and roll country. And, you know, I grew up with AC/DC, and if you didn't like AC/DC, you were in trouble, you know. It was just not cool not to like them. And, yeah, so I always searched out what actually happened is that a friend introduced me to Eric Johnson's playing. And then through Eric, I discovered that he was heavily influenced by Jeff Beck, you know, Eric Clapton, obviously, who I knew anyway. Yeah. But what I did is then I went back and went, okay, so I bought all the old Jeff Beck albums or CDs and studied them. And it was, yeah, so I've been a real, you know, I like the old guys, you know, I like the sound, I like the feeling, you know, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Eric Johnson, I think most people discover Eric Johnson through another guitar player. Certainly, you know, if you like Joe Bonamassa, for example, you know, big popular, you know, blues guy, and you listen to him and go, he's amazing like that, and you listen to all his runs, and then somebody plays you an old, like 30-year-old Eric Johnson album or whatever, and you go, that's where this guy was doing it before. But he absolutely, that, as you say, that crossover between blues, but how would you even describe it? It plays some of that. Well, no, it's you, because you were saying that. So do you think Jeff Beck, even before Eric Johnson was, do you think that's where he got his sort of influences from?
Yeah, well, yeah, I know, but you know, the thing with Eric is that he is one of those guys that will say, okay, well, this is my interpretation of Hendrix, and it's, you know, he plays everything so immaculately, you know, clean and beautiful and perfect, and so it's sometimes it's hard for the new listener to hear those influences. But because I've studied his playing, or did so much as a young kid, now I can listen to it and go, oh yeah, I can, you know, see where it's coming from. But yeah, certainly with like Eric Johnson and Jeff Beck, it was all that kind of stuff. Say if you're in E, where Jeff Beck would do little runs where he would go.
So that's a fairly simple run, but with just a sort of an interesting bend in there,
so
isn't it?
It's basically, and then he hits the note before it and bends up to that note.
Maybe I need to go and dig out and blow the dust off some old Jeff Beck albums, because that to me sounds more Eric Johnson-y than Jeff Beck.
Yeah, well, I think technically it is, but the you know, the essence of the lick is very Jeff Beck. And you know, I think one of the Jeff Beck albums I loved the most was Blow by Blow. You know? It's very raw, stripped back, and the playing's just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, there is that sort of. My problem with Jeff Beck, I say problem, shouldn't really say it, is like, normally on every Jeff Beck album, there's like one or two standout tracks that you go, oh, I can see why everybody raves about this dude so much, but then the rest of the album always is a bit like, you know, so there isn't, you know, you almost just want to have like a playlist of Jeff Beck rather than like all his albums, or just your favorite tracks.
But you know I mean, my little brother's a classic. Like he plays a little bit of music. He's very talented, but he's not committed to it. But whenever I have a new album, what he does is he'll put the CD in the car and he'll just fast forward to all the solos. He just goes, he goes, yeah, that's cool. And I think that's what I used to do a lot too when I was younger, you know, is I would just go to the solo sections, or, you know, because obviously, you know, especially particularly with instrumental albums, you know, they can touch on so many different styles of music, you know. But,
are you a fan of that? Because I think that's my, you know, even though I'm a huge guitar fan, I don't think I've ever really could honestly say that there's any instrumental album that I can play over and over and over again and not sort of get slightly bored of it. But you know, that's, you talked a little bit at the beginning about wanting to be a songwriter. I know you sing as well. You know, is that, you know, do you get more gratification from writing a catchy tune, putting a nice vocal line over it, or is it, do you still think, no, I'm going to tear this solo up?
Instrumental music's definitely the most rewarding for me because of that thing that, you know, I've studied so many different styles, you know, that it's a platform where there's no boundaries, you know. Whereas if I'm singing on an album, I'm not going to sing a country song, then do a heavy song, then do, you know, just because it has no, you know, continuity when you listen to the album. But with instrumental stuff, I absolutely do whatever I want, you know. And I love that about instrumental music. But to answer your questions about instrumentalists, I kind of feel the same. Like I don't purchase a lot of instrumental music, but there is a few guys who are amazing at it. I think Steve Vai is the best composer. Like he is amazing. I've never learned a Steve Vai song. I've never learned any of his solos. But Eric Johnson is my favorite, you know, guitarist to listen to. I think even now, his music's awesome, and it's deeply rooted in blues and country and stuff, and I love that, you know.
That's cool. Yep. So look, when was we talked a little bit about, you know, sort of 14, 15, your first kind of opportunity to sort of jump in a band, and as you say, you realise, you know, the attention that you get, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I want to be a rock star. You know, what happened then in your sort of late teens, early 20s? You know, did you make it with a band, or, you know, what was going on?
Yeah, no, I played in a lot of bands from the age of about 15 or 16. But I never played with any, you know, we had varying levels of success as young kids, but nothing ever major, you know. But from the age of, say, 17 to 19, 20 was the time when I really shut myself away and just practiced and tried to learn as much as I could. And I also went to, I got a scholarship into a music college then as well, which didn't last very long. But
this was in Australia?
Yeah, it was in Melbourne. Yeah, I was actually the first person to get a scholarship. And it wasn't really a scholarship. The teachers they thought I was so good, they just let me in for free. But I didn't know any theory. Like, I didn't know anything.
So everything you'd learned had just been from listening to the radio, listening to albums.
Yeah, pretty much. I had an amazing guitar teacher from the age of about 17.
You said,
David Herzog, and he understood that I didn't have this theoretical background or anything. So he would teach me scales and stuff, but he wasn't too heavily focused on, you know, he just knew I wasn't that kind of player. You know, he knew I was very creative and stuff. So he pieced together the map for me. You know, well, if you like that, then this is, you know, he's using this scale, and you know, these scales all over that. So I knew a lot in that regard, but just in a general theory sense, someone would play a G13 or G7, I'd just be like, what's that? You know, I don't know what it is. anyway, being in that environment was pretty tough for me.
Yeah.
Because obviously so much of it is based around theory, but there I met, you know, hundreds of amazing musicians, you know, so started to play live again, and I spent a lot of my, you know, early 20s in playing in pubs in Australia, you know, up in northern Australia. We'd play 8-10 shows a week, and yeah, so it was just, that period was just full of, you know, lots of practice, lots of gigs, and you know, kind of finding myself as a musician.
We'll go on to, you know, I think you're an interesting kind of, you know, modern guitar player in the sense of you have several strings to your bow when it comes to making a living out of being a musician, and
Sure.
I think everybody could learn from that now, because it really is a minuscule percentage of guitar players are going to be Eric Clapton or John Mayer,
Yeah,
or, you know, it's like, and yet there's a much bigger chunk underneath who are making a living out of it, but accept that it is all about, you know, having a more varied thing. But so we'll come back to that. Okay. But I want to talk about gear, because I've only ever seen you play this guitar, like, you know, in all your videos and everything like that. It's a wicked looking thing. Is this like, I mean, it surely can't be your only guitar, but what is it about this? What is it? And B, what is it that makes it the one that you always use?
Okay, it is one of the first Fender Strat Pluses, which I think it was called a Strat Plus. Yeah. So it was released in 1987, and this is an interesting one because it has an 84 neck. Right. And someone actually told me about this. They said they had a lot of old necks and they'll just bang them on different bodies and stuff. Originally, it was that canary yellow colour.
Really? Yeah, oh, you can see it inside the cavity there. Yeah. That was the original colour.
That was the original colour,
If you can't see that on the camera, it's kind of basically the same colour as this sticker, but wow.
So anyway, hence why the paint was taken off very quickly. The story behind this is that the first good guitar that I bought was a Telecaster, an American Telecaster, when I was about 17 or something. And I liked Telecasters, but I never imagined myself playing one. But someone at the time who I, you know, admired said, you should get a Telecaster. So I was like, okay, I'll get a Telecaster. And but I played it for a couple of months, and I just found it really limiting. And then I was walking past a store one day, and I saw this guitar in the window, and I said, can I play it? And I went and played it, and I just really loved it. I loved the feel of the neck. I loved that it had 22 frets. And I said, do you want to swap? And they said, yeah, okay. So I've had it ever since. So anyway, it was my first like American guitar. Yeah. And I've just had it ever since.
But so that's not original, is it?
No, not much is original.
No, I was going to say that.
That's a Super V tremolo system that they did for me, the Blade Runner. Right. Yeah, it's one of the old pressed steel ones. So anyway, the guitar doesn't have the original pickups. Obviously, it's original scratch plate. Still got that first roll and that thing that they did.
Yeah, we should try and get a closer, because I didn't even really see that, because you've got the sort of the vibration sort of wrap around it. But yeah, the first ones I remember, it looked the same way it is over the top 3 strings. It looked like that all the way. Across.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I think it's one of the very, very early ones. And the dispersal locking.
So the Spurzels aren't fun enough. In fact, what I might do is we might have just a small intermission here. Can you grab that my old white? Because I've got this was literally my first like decent guitar. Yeah. And it is an 86. So it's almost like a sort of a twin brother.
Wow.
So this is, sorry, I say 86. This is an 88 neck.
Did you? And that's the original nut?
No. So the story behind this was, I was working in Andertons, and I could only have been here for like 6 months or something like that. So we're talking about like maybe 1989, something like that. And one of the other guitar staff there had the neck. They were one of the other guitar guys was sort of was doing okay, was like sort of semi-pro player, and one of the back in those days, Fender had like an artist office in London. Yeah. And the guy at the artist office had said, look, I've got a couple of bits you might like, and it was essentially, it was this neck, and there was a body that was routed HSH, and I think but it didn't have anything on it. It was just literally a body and a neck, and it might have had these machine heads on it. I can't remember. Anyway, he sold me this for £150, and it was the Jeff Beck green colour with a pearly scratch plate.
Yeah, cool.
So this was a little bit of a parts guitar for me. So I changed the nut and the saddles, and I put the different pickups in.
So did that nut slot straight into that thing, or did you have to get someone to work?
So this wasn't a Strat Plus. This would have just been a standard
just
Strat.
Standard Strat. Okay.
But I remember thinking that this Spertzel machine heads, where the strings get lower, the machine heads get like a lower height the further you go away. Great design, because then you can get rid of the string tree.
Yep.
We'll plug this in a minute and see how similar it sounds. But this has always been like for sentimental value. This is my first sort of proper guitar. But it'll be interesting to see how similar they kind of feel.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, look, enough about that. Let's go back to this, war machine.
Yeah, so look, man, it was just my first guitar, and for so many years after that, the possibility to get another guitar was just, it was more likely I'd get a trip to the moon, So I spent all my really solid years practicing and playing, and you just get to know an instrument, you know, and I like it. And I have a lot of other guitars, but when it comes
big jumbo frets, have you refretted that at some point?
Yeah, they're actually they're massive, man.
They're actually
a bit too big. I actually contacted the guys at Fender, and I was trying to get a particular size.
It's a really good free fret though, isn't it? It's a good job, but it's just...
Yeah, well, I've actually had that guitar refretted about, it must be 12 times over the years.
No way.
Yeah. But yeah, they're massive, man.
I don't mind. I think it feels nice. It's a thin neck, isn't it? Is that some of the fretboards worn away, or do you think it's just that it was always a thin neck?
No, this is one of the major modifications that's been done. It's had a flattened radius,
right?
So for all you kids playing Strats out there that want low actions, you know how they always tend to fret out and stuff, and getting a flatter radius is the way to deal with it.
And what have you got in there pickup wise?
Damasio's, that's the Steve Vai Evo pickup or Evolution or something. These two, I don't know what they are. They're Damasio something, but yeah.
I mean, I've no idea. They're staggered pole pieces, so you'll have to look that up and see which Damasio's.
Look, I quite often swap out the single coil and put in the humbucker.
I noticed you've got this kind of removable little bit of plastic here, so I thought that's potentially what. But
it just depends on what I'm doing, like what album we're doing or whatever,
And do you ever set this up so that the trem can work on it, or it's just wound back and that's the end?
No, I don't. That's why I will have another guitar with a floating trem. I just I'm not a big tremolo guy. Like if I use trem, it's more for doing something ridiculous, like you know, some sound effect, rather than finessely, using it for vibrato or anything. So I just leave it because like one of my favorite guitars, like I love Gibson guitars, but I just can't, they're too big for me. But but I like a guitar to feel like a Gibson. I like the flat profiles, and this kind of thing. So and the stop tail pieces. So yeah.
That's cool, man. And you mentioned that although this is your number one guitar, you will have other guitars. What is there what is the one that you'll typically go to with the trem on it?
I actually bought from a great store in UK. Actually, I have a variety of Stratocasters. I have another Strat that I built that is pretty much similar to this. It's also a maple board that has a floating trem. But I also got one of the Charvel Guthrie guitars. Remember?
I do remember.
Yes.
I do remember.
Yes.
And it's all a bit weird as well. So you've got a Guthrie Strat. Today is the day that we're actually doing the Guthrie Govan clinic this evening. And Glenn has didn't know about it, but has booked a hotel room in the hotel that we're doing the Guthrie Govan. So Glenn and I will be enjoying a beer together later.
Yeah.
And if you were at that event too, which I'm sure some of you will have been, perhaps you saw Glenn standing at the bar. I have no idea.
But yeah, that's a great guitar, man. Like, it's really, you know, the thing I loved about that guitar is that it actually feels a lot like this. You know, the fret profile, that it's got a very similar neck shape. It's very thin. Yeah, but I bought that. Remember, I called you because I was just starting on the new album. Yeah. And yeah, we needed a floating trem option.
So he's got on that this, like, the original Floyd Rose system before.
That's right.
It actually had the locking
and
system on there.
Man, it's so cool. It's so easy to change strings, and it's great. And they've got that tremolo thing in there, which is really cool. But yeah, it's a great guitar.
Yeah,
really cool
it is
guitar.
a cool guitar.
Yeah, very expensive, but cool.
Now, obviously, this is almost a bit of a cliche, isn't it? Every time we get a really good guitar player in, all of a sudden out of the box comes saying, well, I've just bought this, you know, original Klon Centaur with me. Is that just like, that's the pedal you need, and then you just know almost whatever amp anybody plugs you into, you can do something?
Look, it is really cool, man. It's I have a lot of pedals. I'm not a big pedal guy. I'm more of an amp guitar guy, you know. And whenever I play live, my setup is very, very simple. You know, I'll have a boost, something like that, a tube screamer or some other custom jobby. But yeah, it really does something unique. You know, it has a lot of top end clarity, and it's just got this really lovely harmonic overtone that happens with it, and it's great. You know, I mean, but you can plug it into any amp and pull a sound. You know,
we need to buy one, Pete. Next time one comes up on eBay for like a semi-sensible price, I think we just need to bid for it.
You can have that for 10,000.
10,000.
Yeah.
What is that? Yen.
Yen.
It's a deal. And obviously, we said right at the beginning of this video, I met you at the start of the kind of the victory journey. Yep. So is that what you're using amp-wise at the moment?
Yeah. Well, I think the last 3 or 4 albums I've done, I've used all the victory stuff. They've been amazing. They've been huge supporters for me. So the last instrumental album, we used basically everything. The VX wasn't out then, but we used the V30 because I had Johnny Highland and Tommy Emmanuel on that album too. Tommy loved the
clang.
Yeah, it was cool. It was so cool, man. It was like that for me too. You know, it was awesome.
I don't think you know, weirdly, Johnny Highland I've met a few times at trade shows, and he kind of, you know, he's done a clinic for Andertons once, so he kind of, you know, once you're sort of introduced, he's like, he remembers you, and it's like, he's an absolute sweetheart. Tommy Emmanuel I've never met, although I am reliably informed by our guitar guys that he's been in the store about 10 times, and I don't know, but just as a customer. So, but he's an insane player.
Man, he is incredible. He was just at my house a couple of months ago, and we were having a bit of a, you know, just having a coffee and a jam and stuff, and he's just one of those dudes who can make any guitar sound great. You know, there's this big thing about him. You know, a lot of guys know that he has quite a low action on his acoustic guitar. But when he was at my place, I had all these acoustics out. You know, I just pulled them out from the shelves, and there was about 12 of them there. And we're just going through them and playing them and stuff. And he picked up the one that, like, even I can't play. It's just like, it's got the worst action on it. And he just blazes on it, you know. And it's yeah, you know, obviously there's certain setups that help you play. Obviously he plays such a huge array of styles, and he needs to find that middle ground, you know. So the guitar he takes on stage will have a pretty low action, but doesn't matter, you know, you can play anything. It's just incredible. Nice. But I'll get in contact with him and tell him to. We'd love to do something like this. That would be super cool. He's an amazing guy, absolutely amazing guy.
Oh, awesome.
So anyway, we used all the victories on that album. We used the V50, the V100, the V30, the V40, which was fantastic. The V100 was the one we used the most because I like to
it's a big sounding amp, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, I like to record loud. Not that my producer hates it because I always blow up speakers and stuff in the studio. But yeah,
I know that this was the track of yours that I keep going back to, that I love, is from the Power the trio album that you did. and I'm never gonna. I know now I'm on the spot. I can't remember the name, but it's the one with the videos, the really kind of jerky kind of video. Like
Justify.
Justify.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a tune.
Yeah.
You should go and watch that. Play us a little bit of, you know, because
I don't know the last time I played it. So that's
a great
all.
Tune.
Yeah. So that's for all you kids out there. That's kind of like one of my favourite guitar players is Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
You know, just for his riffs, they're incredible. Now, a riff like that is, you know, Tom Morello will write majority of his riffs with the pentatonic scale. So scales are not only used for, you know, soloing, they can be used for writing riffs as well. So that, just around that first shape of the pentatonic scale. That's it, you know.
All the great riffs, though. I mean, I think that's the hardest thing about writing a song in 2017 is all the best riffs are basically out of a relatively simple scale. And it's tough, you know, when you go through all the sort of, you know, all the Zeppelin. I mean, I still think as a riffs based band, you know, like something like Zeppelin, it's just every single riff just like wow.
Yeah, exactly.
But none of them are desperately difficult, are they? So you just sort of think that they're all well, not difficult. Perhaps that's the wrong word. They're not complicated as such, are they? You know?
Yeah. I mean, things like Black Dog were, you know, there's a few parts in that are really cool. You know, I think you know, Jimmy Page is amazing, but John Paul Jones was a incredible songwriter. You know, and they were all incredible. But yeah, I mean, man, I loved Zeppelin as a kid. You know, it was. I felt very cool when I could play a couple of Zeppelin.
I bet. It's anyway. Look, so take us through to how did you end? I mentioned I wanted to talk about the fact that you know, I know you've got strings to your bow. I know you're obviously you know, you're gigging, you're recording, you're doing session stuff, you're doing a bit of sales, you know, just to sort of try. What would you say to, you know, perhaps an aspiring young guitar player now that is very talented, so they and they're looking to kind of, you know, make a career in music? You know, what kind of advice could you give in terms of, you know, things to do or not do? Or
yeah, I think it's you have to be prepared to diversify what you do. It's like man, I've done everything. I've repaired guitars, I've sold guitars, I've you know, been a guitar tech, I've played in bands that I didn't want to play in, I've done theatre, I've done fucking acting, I've done everything, you know, all with guitar. But it's I got to the point where I was like, as an artist, because what I love to do is create. That's what I like to do. You know, I'm just not one of those guys who can go and play. I have done it before, so I know this. I'm speaking from experience. But if I have to go and play, even with some famous singer or something, and play music that doesn't interest me, I get bored very, very quickly, and I start to not enjoy myself. So if it depends on what you want to do. There's different kind of players. There's guys who just love to gig. It doesn't matter if they're playing 2 chords in the, you know, in some band or whatever, or they're playing some jazz club or whatever. There's guys that just love to gig, and I really admire those people. Yeah. What I love to do is create and do my own music. So what I have to do to be able to do that is pull a source of money from somewhere else sometimes, you know. And I'm prepared to do that, because either way I would have to spend my time doing some gig that I don't necessarily enjoy, or I can do something else in the industry and make some money. So you know, it's look, the industry is it's difficult now, but there's a lot of new exciting things too, like what you're doing here. You know, there's a lot of exciting YouTube channels. You've got all these, you know, you can expose your music really easily through social media and stuff, which is fantastic, you know. But you just have to try and be the best that you can be. You know, that doesn't mean you have to be considered the fastest guitar player or the most technical or anything. It's got nothing to do with it. You know, I've got most of the players that I really admire today are technically not that great, but where they are amazing is, you know, their sound. They spend so much time on their sound and the songs they write, and, you know, I really admire that. So yeah, you have to be prepared to work hard, as in any industry, but you must diversify. You know, you're not always going to land that dream gig. I've landed the dream gig a couple of times, but it doesn't last forever, you know, and you just have to be prepared to do an array of things.
What was the dream gig?
Well, that's why I came to Europe. I got offered to come and record with a band in Prague who was super famous, you know. And so I went from playing, you know, just the general rock clubs in Melbourne to all of a sudden living in a mansion, playing to 40,000 people, you know, getting chauffeur driven and behaving really badly because, you know, it was just what everything that I dreamed about. And it was a great experience. But what I found out again was that it was that thing that while I enjoyed it and it was great, you know, like my friends and my family back home were super proud of me and, you know, all that kind of thing. But deep down myself, there was more that I wanted to do, you know, and it's you know, the guitar is you know, my first passion, but what I really love doing is creating. Like I said, you know, it's the music as a whole for me is an art form, and I need to do it. I need to express myself, and you know, I just start to, in that particular situation, it was amazing, but you just start to see the bullshit in it all, you know. I mean, we go from I don't mean to ruin anyone's dreams because it's great, you know, but when you're in that situation where I'm hired to play someone else's music, but a member of the band, and it's music that I you know, I liked, but it wasn't my kind of thing, you know, it was something different for me. You know, you're interviewed on primetime TV and you do all this stuff and that, and the person interviewing you doesn't know anything about music, they don't care about it, but they're pretending that they're your best friend and stuff, and you start to see through it a little bit. And for me, I was like, well, hang on, this isn't what I want, you know. I want to, you know, speak to people like you, you know, who love guitar, you know, who know guitar, you know. And so yeah, it was a great experience, and that's why now I know what I want to do, and I want to write music and you know, make records. That's what I love doing. Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. For me, I think the most gratifying thing for me when I'm doing interviews like this, or if you meet a stellar superstar, you absolutely, the first interaction is there's like the glazed look of, fine, ask me another question about, you know, the latest girlfriend I've had, or the clothes that I'm wearing, or the same question that I've been asked like 100 times by the previous 100 TV report. And then if you can get them to sort of go, I don't actually want to talk about any of that, I actually like to talk about the guitar or something, and you see all of a sudden there's like the sort of the fog lift from their eyes of like, oh my god, I'm going to talk about something that's actually interesting.
Totally.
It's you know, I think it's great when, you know, when that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, look, you know, let's talk about the now then. So tell me a little bit about the new album. Where can, you know, what can people expect on it? You know, maybe we could play out with a little bit of it. Would be great. But so tell us, you know, when did you finish recording it? And
well, it was quite a long process because we built a studio so I could record in at that time. So it was a very hectic time, and then obviously when we got the studio up and running, we were getting sounds and all this kind of stuff. So the album took quite a while to happen. But the album's I won't say it's progressive, but it has quite long arrangements on some pieces. Long for me, anyway. It's very heavy, very melodic, and it has huge guitar solos, you know. So yeah, some tracks clock in 2.5 minutes, you know, when they lend themselves to it, you know, because there's some very you know, kind of theatrical endings and stuff, you know, very big open chords and yeah, but there's some really tight, punchy rock songs in there too. The first track we just released a couple of weeks ago, Broken, is kind of it's a good representation of how the album is.
You sent me a link to that
Yeah,
track,
I
didn't
did,
you?
yeah,
And that, I mean, that's not heavy, is it? I mean, that's just a kind of a...
Yeah, well, I think it's offset by the melodic vocal melody. You know, it's you know, you said before I'm a singer. I don't consider myself a singer. You know, there's certain things that I'm comfortable doing. So I will, you know, write music around that. You know, but if you took out, you know, there is some, like, the intros and stuff are quite heavy rocky. You know, and I think the sound of the amp certainly, you know, lent the album a bit more towards the heavy side than the rock side, you know, which was cool because that's what I wanted. Yeah.
Anybody playing on the album that you've always wanted to work with, or?
No, it's pretty. I mean, it has some amazing players on there. There's a drummer called Lucius Borich, who's big star in Australia. He's from the band Cog, who's some guys in the UK. There you go, Cog fan over there. They're amazing. Lucius has played on all of my albums for, I think, the last 4 albums or something. And we have a bass player, Junior Braguinha, who's a Brazilian guy who plays with Virgil Donati.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he played bass on 4 or 5 tracks. And then my producer, best mate, Peter Reggie Bowman from Australia. He's like the Bob Rock of Australia. He's a total legend. He's just one of those guys who can play anything, you know. He came to Prague twice to you know, to work on this album, and he's the only guy that's ever played any guitar on one of my albums. He's like, you know, I would do the night shift, he would do the morning shift, and I'd come in at night, and he's like, oh man, I just heard this little guitar line, you know, and I'm thinking, no fucking way is that staying, you know. But again, there I'm like, wow, that's really good, you know. He's just one of those dudes, and he actually played bass on, you know, 4 or 5 tracks as well, and did backing vocals, and yeah, he's really cool.
And the name of the album is
Fire and Rain.
Fire and Rain.
Yeah.
And I'll put a link in the description below where you can go and listen to that. I think it would be amazing if there's any riffs in your head that you particularly really like from that album, or something that you can play out on that's sort of indicative of what people might hear.
Well, maybe what might be cool for some of the guys is I'll show some of the solo techniques. Sure. Maybe I'll do it a bit slow first, and then you know, so
we love
something
that. We love
to
that.
practice.
For sure.
Okay, so with all the solos, what I would do is that when I play, I predominantly use the pentatonic scale, but I also use the diminished 7th scale or something.
You're asking me.
I call it the Karate Kids, you know, scale, you know, from the end of Crossroads, you know, this thing. Is that diminished 7th?
Something I can't play.
Yeah. So anyway, one of the techniques I used a lot is that I like to play the diminished scale 3 notes per string, which is a lot of players do. So this kind of thing, say if I'm in E, this kind of thing. And what I did with this album is I incorporated some tapping as well. So in a lot of the solos you'll hear runs like...
You've got an alien stretch.
Yeah.
I can't do that. It's just like all of a sudden your little finger kind of just sprouted out and did like a 4-fret stretch from your 3rd finger. It's like,
So the other thing on this album too is that I tuned, that this guitar's not really set up for it, but I tuned down to C for all the riffs. So,
right. Big fat sounding riffs.
Yeah, it's got quite a big...
You don't use like a baritone or something for that? You just literally retune the guitar?
I just retune the guitars, but what I'll do is I'll adjust the the relief in the neck a little bit to pull the strings up and yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, look, as I said, if you want to, you know, just smash a little more riff, you know, a few more riffs out or whatever, just you know, it's all good. We love all this.
All right.
I know what everyone will want to know.
Uh-huh.
Tell them about the hairband thing.
Well, it's just that it's a good thing if you're basically just acts as a string mute. You know, same with like remember on the old Gretches, they would have that dampener. It's exactly the same thing. So it just dampens the strings. So if you're doing a lot of legato runs with finger tapping or something like that, it's you know, it helps. It's just a string mute, you know, particularly with gain. You know, the strings get very, very.
So it's not, because I notice a few players who'll have it you know, up here to stop the sort of the ringing noise, but that's not what you're using it for, is it?
Nah, they have it up there so they can slide it. So
it's almost like a capo, isn't it? The way you've got that
kind
of.
Yeah, you can.
I know it's not pushing the strings down, but the way you can make it tense or loose on the
absolutely. Just basically a string mute. So with something like that, it's, if I do it, I'll do it without it, so you can hear that it's, you know, you'll get a lot more string noise. So I'm picking up here, and then there's sections where...
It still sounded pretty neat and tidy to me, but I think I could...
It's early in the morning, mate.
I know what you mean. There are one or two probably unwanted noises that you get if you don't have the mute.
This thing, I mean, this is a product now. I don't know who makes it, but this is a technique that's, you know, you use in the studio all the time. I mean, I used to be in the studio sometime, not have anything, take off your sock and tie it around the guitar. But I mean, there's all different things, you know, like I've heard interviews with Angus, you know, from AC/DC, where they'll take strings off the guitar and stuff, because you're trying to get the cleanest possible.
What was the Def Leppard story where they would literally track songs? They would even track chords one string at a time, and then build up great big chords by just playing.
That's ridiculous, but I can imagine.
Who was the producer that did all the Def Leppard and Aerosmith? It was the big, like the mega famous guy from the 80s.
It was Mutt Lange.
Mutt Lange. Yeah, I'm sure it's that kind of. I think he had an approach to doing stuff where, again, I think so. I might.
No, man. I mean,
whenever I say anything like this, there'll be 10,000 people watching this will go, totally wrong, Anderton. It's like, this is actually what happened. It's like, okay.
But he had a pretty good track record, didn't he?
He did.
I mean, man, if Mutt come into me and said, take your strings off, play one, I'd be like, yes, Mutt, no problem, no problem. Yeah.
Play this. I mean, I can't remember the last time actually, they don't look too bad, the strings on there. I just want to see if it's like, this could be like a, I know they're a few years apart on the thing. I might not be in tune or anything.
That feels good. What pickups?
A JB and a Jazz.
Jazz?
It's when I
what was going on,
when I put
mate?
that guitar
Jazz.
no, because this honestly, this is pre internet, everything. So you sit there with a guitar catalog, a Seymour Duncan catalog, going, I don't know what pickups to put in. And the bit at the beginning, no, I can't remember. There's one page in there. Seymour Duncan himself is talking about the pickups that he uses on his guitar. Bearing in mind this was, 1990 or something. And this is what he used on his guitar. So I thought, wow, if you own the company, if they're the pickups you use.
Still the most popular coupling of Seymour Duncans in the world.
Really?
Yeah. But I bet you
I
bet you that's probably because Seymour Duncan in his catalogue in 1990 said this is what I use, and everyone's just gone, well, if that's what you use, then they must sound decent, so.
I like the bridge, it's great. Let's see the fret out.
Yeah. That sounds good though. It's almost like it's intentional.
Do you know what that sounds like? That sounds like the end of Crossroads when Steve Vai can't hit that note. He's going.
No one's ever made it do that
goes
before. Do you know what? This is the second time now in a video where I'd be found out for having never seen Crossroads. So I know Pete and Nora actually bought it for me.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So I do need to watch it. I feel really bad. I feel really bad. Yeah. We had
Listen, mate. Listen. You're going to go home tonight. Skip the Guthrie Clinic. You're going to go home and watch Crossroads. Seriously.
I really should just watch it. Do you know what? One morning, Pete, I'll come in extra early one morning. Well, coffee, like 7:30 in the morning. We'll just watch Crossroads before we do that.
Mate, you're going to need to get in earlier than that because you are going to watch it twice in a row. Seriously, you'll finish it and just go, that was the greatest movie ever.
I do. I got to have a little bit of Ralph Macchio in the morning, haven't you? Was that his name? Was he the Karate Kid, Ralph Macchio?
That's what I was saying, the Karate Kid style before, yeah.
I can't. Someone's going to tell me that Ralph Macchio was like in Happy.
Sounds great.
Well, I'm happy. Basically, that you're only the second really good guitarist that's ever played that. Ian Thornley played that about 2 or 3 years ago, and he said it was nice as well.
Excuse my ignorance. Who's Ian Thornley?
Big Wreck. Big Wreck's guitar player.
I don't know Big Wreck either.
Oh man! So Big Wreck, Canadian band.
Is this like am I like? No. I'm getting doomed for like this is like my not seeing Crossroads
not
thing,
at all, because prior to doing the interview with Ian Thornley. I remember Rob Chapman had said at some point in our, time that we'd known each other, Big Wreck's one of my favourite bands, and it was like, okay, I must check them out. Never ever did. And then one of the guitar manufacturers said, we got Ian Thornley coming over from Big Wreck. Do you want to interview him like that? So I'm like, okay, that'd be awesome. Better listen to some Big Wreck. And I think my first question the first line in the interview with Ian Thornley is, why aren't you the biggest rock band in the world? It's just like, oh my God. It's unbelievable. I think you'd like it.
Where are they from?
Canada, somewhere in Canada.
Okay.
But it's sort of proggy, but he sings like Chris Cornell. He plays guitar like you do, or Guthrie Govan, or ridiculous guitar player. And they write these. It's at the sort of probably the mainstream end of prog. It's like accessible prog rock rather than like. Totally weird, don't understand it. So so every tune's got like a hook and a melody and a relatively.
I'll have to check them out.
Absolutely brilliant band.
I'll
play some when we finish this. It's really cool.
And afterwards I'm going to play. Have you at least seen the end clip on YouTube of
I've never seen anything.
Why?
From Crossroads.
How is that possible?
I don't know. It's just
seriously.
I think it's just I don't know. I guess it's just like. It's one of those things, just passes you by. I feel bad now. Anyway, look, I'll show you some Big Wreck. We'll go and sit and watch Crossroads together.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, man, look, it's always lovely to see you.
Great to see you. Thank you so much, man.
Glenn Proudfoot. I'll put links in the description below where you can find out more. You should go and check out his stuff. He's very cool. Anyway, thank you for watching, everybody, and we shall see you next time on Andertons TV.
Ciao.
everybody, thanks for watching the Andertons Guitar YouTube channel. If you're a drummer or a keyboard player or interested in music technology, you might find one of our other channels interesting, and I'll put details of those in the description below. If you want to find out more about the products we've just featured, please click here. If you'd like to buy a t-shirt like this, please click here. If you want to watch another video on our guitar channel, click down here. And to subscribe to our guitar channel, click here. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.